The movie begins as we are introduced to a new horror game called Stay Alive. This game is still under beta testing stage, so the company has asked a lot of people to test the game. One of them is a guy named Loomis. In the game, he expertly kills a lot of enemies and moves on to the next stage, which is a haunted mansion. The place is riddled with several spirits, but most of them are harmless. However, when Loomis' character climbs up the stairs, a woman in red suddenly attacks him from behind and hangs him from the ceiling. After the game is over, Loomis becomes upset that he couldn't win, but fear and adrenaline also runs through his veins as he hasn't played such a realistic game in a long time. Later, he calls his childhood friend Hutch and invites him to his place to play with him. However, Hutch says he can't make it, so they agree to see each other later that weekend. Afterwards, Loomis hears a sound from upstairs and goes to check what it is. But it is just his buddy Rex and his girlfriend Sarah having fun. Shortly after, Loomis falls asleep but is soon woken up by a nightmare. Unable to sleep, he goes downstairs to drink a glass of milk. Out of the blue, a shadow appears in front of him which sends Loomis running upstairs. To his horror, he finds Rex and Sarah brutally killed in their room. Suddenly, a chain wraps around Loomis' neck and he is hanged to death, which is exactly the same way his character died in the game. The next day, Loomis' friend, Hutch, is seen at his workplace. His boss, Miller, calls him into his office with a very serious look. Hutch is afraid that he's going to get scolded, but to his surprise, Miller simply asks for advice on the new video game he has bought. This implies that he's also an avid gamer. Afterwards, Hutch learns about the death of Loomis and his friends, which sends him into a state of shock. The next day, he attends the funeral and gives his condolences to the bereaved families. As Hutch reminisces about the good times spent with his friends, Loomis' sister walks up to him and hands him a bag containing her late brother's video games. She says that her parents wouldn't allow her to play the games and that Loomis would want Hutch to have them. Shortly after, Hutch also meets the deceased girl, Sarah's best friend, Abigail. She empathizes with him and gives him her number, mentioning that he can call her if he needs someone to talk to. After the funeral, Hutch visits his friend October and her brother, Phineas. October comforts Hutch and helps him grieve while Phineas makes light of the situation. Moments later, Phineas finds the Stay Alive game in the bag and Hutch reveals that it was the same game Loomis was playing the night he died. He also adds that Loomis had invited him to play with him, which he refused. After hearing everything, Phineas becomes eager to play the game, but Hutch thinks it's inappropriate. However, when a stubborn Phineas asserts that it can be a tribute to their late friend, he agrees. Later that day, several other players arrive at Hutch's house, including his other friend, Swink, and the girl from the funeral, Abigail. Phineas and his sister, October, are also there. After they set up all the devices and boot up the game, Hutch's boss, Miller, joins them online from his office. Before the game starts, a strange prayer appears on the screen and they are instructed to read it to start the game. The group naively obliges, and after they finish reciting the prayer, the game tells them that they have made a grave mistake and they will die for it. However, Hutch and his friends aren't fazed by the threat and they proceed to choose their avatars. In the game, the players must uncover the horrible truth of a place named the Gerridge Plantation. In order to win, the players have to defeat ghosts and demons, including the main villainous Countess Elizabeth. The players may also use a rose to escape ghosts they can't defeat. October remembers hearing about the story of the Countess, but she isn't able to recall the exact details. Soon, the game begins, and as the others get busy killing demons, Miller makes his way into a mausoleum. Inside, he explores the tunnels. He also runs out of roses and soon stumbles upon a torture chamber. Just as Miller relays the information back to his teammates, the Countess of the Plantation suddenly appears behind him and stabs his character in the neck to death. Soon, October gets bored of the game and convinces everyone to log off and call it a night. Then, all of them return to their respective homes. Meanwhile, Miller, who is still at his office, sees a dark figure running outside. Brushing it aside, He closes his office and proceeds to walk away, but suddenly, the main door mysteriously opens again. Puzzled, he returns to inspect and notices a controller laying on the floor. Suddenly, the Countess from the video game appears in real life and attacks Miller. She kills him by stabbing him in the neck, and he dies the same way his character died in the game. The next day, Hutch arrives at work and becomes horrified to learn that his boss has died. Two detectives, Thibodeau and King, investigate the case and interrogate all the employees. When it's Hutch's turn, he reveals that Miller was playing an online game with him and his friends right before he died. Hearing this, King starts to suspect Hutch, as he lives awfully near the office. That evening, the group again gathers at Hutch's place to discuss the incident. Everyone is shocked by Miller's death, but Phineas just wants to continue with the game. This pisses off the rest of the group, prompting them to leave the room. Outside, they discuss Miller's death and Hutch notes that he died the same way his character did. With this theory, he presumes that Loomis' death also had something to do with the game. Hence, the group suddenly grows worried for Phineas and returns back inside to check up on him. Fortunately, the nerd is just smoking, and it is revealed that he was about to die in the game, but he paused it in the nick of time. Later, everyone that played the game begins to experience visions and see horrific scenes. Searching for answers, Hutch goes to his office and looks up online for more information about the recent deaths. He learns that everyone, Loomis, Rex, Miller, and Sarah died the same way their characters did in the game Stay Alive. Taken aback, he meets his friends and shares the entire ordeal with them. October believes it immediately. She tells everyone the story of the Gerridge plantation, which she heard from her grandmother. It turns out the game is based on the real-life story of Countess Elizabeth Bathory. The Countess used to hunt for innocent victims in a black carriage and gut them with silver shears. So, as punishment for her sins, people had walled the Countess in the plantation's tower, alive. The scene then cuts to Phineas, who is headed somewhere, alone. As he drives, a woman suddenly appears in front of him, causing him to swerve his car violently. Fortunately, he gets out, unharmed, and calls his friends for help. Phineas also shares that he has been seeing and hearing creepy things lately. Hutch and the others rush to pick him up. However, before they can arrive, Phineas again starts to hear weird noises, much to his horror. Suddenly, a black carriage appears and runs him over, killing him instantly. Later, when Hutch and the others reach the place, they find Phineas's body on the road. When they check his laptop inside the car, it's revealed that even his game character had died in the same way. Soon, the cops arrive and Hutch tells them about the game and its relation with the deaths of the victims. But Detective Thibodeau finds it hard to believe and instead warns Hutch against joking over such matters. Meanwhile, curious about the game, Detective King decides to give it a try, but he quickly loses and his character dies before Hutch could stop him. After the detectives leave, October and the others determine to get to the bottom of the truth. Hutch decides to find out everything he can about the game while October plans to look for whoever killed Phineas. Elsewhere, Detective King goes to a game shop to find more information about the game. However, he doesn't find anything and instead, he gets brutally murdered in his car by the Countess. On the other hand, Hutch and Abigail sneak into Loomis' house to find more information about the game. There, it is revealed that Hutch spent his entire childhood living in Loomis' home because his eccentric father thought his wife was cheating on him, so he burned down their house. Unfortunately, Hutch was the only one to survive as his mom perished in the fire and his dad was sent to prison. Meanwhile, Swink and October are at Hutch's place reading books about the Countess and the Gerridge plantation. Just then, they get a call from Hutch, and October tells him that she has found a way to defeat the Countess. All they need to do is put 3 nails through the Countess' heart, neck and forehead to force her human spirit back into her body. October also mentions that the Countess is afraid of mirrors, and that's one way to repel her. Seconds later, they learn from the news that Detective King is dead, and soon after, a swarm of cops show up at Hutch's place. Fortunately, Swink and October quickly pack their stuff and flee through the fire exit. After a while, all of them meet up at Luma's house and realize the game is being played automatically on Swink's computer. They then see October's character on the screen, making them wonder where she is. At the same time, October is wandering outside the house when she sees the Countess inside an abandoned property. Determined to end the madness once and for all, she follows the devil inside. There, she picks up a nail gun and attacks the Countess when she sees her. But to her surprise, the attack doesn't work and the Countess remains unharmed. Left with no choice, October tries to flee the property, but the Countess catches her using a shackle. She then hangs October by the ankle. Hutch and his friends hear her scream and rush inside the building to help her. Unfortunately, when they arrive, it's already too late, as October has been finished off brutally. Later, the devastated group heads off to the address where the Countess has apparently been locked. As all the friends are dying one by one, Swink figures out that one has to keep on playing, so that the others can use this distraction as an opportunity to complete their mission. In the next scene, they arrive at their location and split up. Hutch and Abigail make their way inside the mansion while Swink stays in the van to play the game. After a while, Swink finds out that the mansion is actually the same garage plantation of the game. So, he calls Hutch and helps him navigate him through the house with the help of the game. Hutch wanders around different parts of the property, like the cemetery, and verifies that it is indeed the real garage plantation. Meanwhile, Abigail makes her way upstairs into a room where she finds a doll that looks exactly like the Countess. She then enters a wardrobe, which leads into another part of the house. There, she sees pictures and articles about the garage plantation and also finds the Countess's shears. All of a sudden, it becomes dark and Abigail screams out loud, prompting Hutch to rush back inside the house. He asks Swink where he should go, and the latter starts unlocking every door in the game for Hutch to access. This is possible because now, what happens in the game also happens in real life. Hutch eventually reaches the wardrobe where the Countess is about to kill Abigail. And in the nick of time, Swink throws roses at her in the game, causing her to vanish. Upon rescuing her, Hutch kisses Abigail and the two have an emotional moment. Afterwards, the two listen as Swink tells them to find 3 nails and get the roses. While Swink is outside talking to Hutch, the van doors suddenly close with his computer still inside. Fortunately, right before the Countess is about to kill his character in the game, he opens the door and saves himself. Shortly after, the Countess comes for him in real life, even though his character is still alive. With no other choice, Swink runs for his life and eventually trips over a bush of roses. Meanwhile, the newly formed couple reach the van and find Swink's game character dead. Hence, they start collecting roses and nails to kill the real Countess in the tower. Suddenly, the carriage comes after them and Hutch locks Abigail inside a room. He then uses a rose to scare the Countess away. Following this, the couple head towards the torture chamber, and then towards the tower, where the real Countess is supposedly locked. But unfortunately, the door closes itself and Abigail gets separated from Hutch. Realizing that they don't have enough time before the spirit catches up to them, Abigail urges him to leave her and finish the mission alone. Hutch is reluctant, but after much insisting, he hands her a rose and departs. Shortly after, he reaches the top of the tower and finds the Countess' body in a coffin. Without further ado, he then starts hammering the nails into her body. Elsewhere, the Countess' spirit has captured Abigail and is about to finish her off. But before she can do so, Hutch hammers the last nail into her forehead, causing the spirit to evaporate. Thinking that the mission is finally over, Hutch prepares to leave, but unfortunately, the Countess gets up, and all the nails that were driven inside her fall to the ground. Taken aback, Hutch grabs his reflective laptop and keeps her at bay, long enough so that he can set the room on fire. However, in the process, he also gets trapped, and is forced to relive the horrible incident he suffered as a child. But just then, Swink comes to the rescue and saves him with the help of Abigail. It's revealed that he was never killed because of the rose bushes he fell on top of. Then, the three friends quickly flee while the evil Countess body burns in the tower. A few days later, a video game shop receives a copy of the Stay Alive game, which he finds very interesting. And in no time, the store starts selling several copies of it. The movie ends as the Countess once again emerges from the tower, ready to pounce on more victims.